Welcome to Conversations with Garmamie. This is episode 10. Our guest is...
I'm Adam Newlands, and I'm one of the partners at Stalwart Brewing Company in Carleton Place.
We're talking beer, and not just any type of beer, but craft beer and launching a brewery. All right, Adam, tell us where the idea all began. When and where were you guys? What inspired it?
Yeah, for sure. So the two of the partners, Nathan and Ed, and I all worked at the Wellington Gastropub in Wellington West in Ottawa, and we were always serving craft beer and appreciated it and got a taste for it, and thought that perhaps we should make it ourselves so we could enjoy it more cheaply.
Okay.
And then that led to us pretty much twice a month or so on average. We would get together and we'd brew a batch because it's a bit of work and it's easier to split, costs of equipment and the actual beer. It's easier to make a double batch than just a single batch, but a double batch is maybe a bit much if you're trying to try a variety of styles and brew a bunch of different things. So with three people, it was easy and it was fun.
Sorry, can you educate us on when you say a batch, how much is a batch?
So
How many liters?
most home brewers probably do a batch that's about 20 liters because
Okay.
it's the size of most fermenters that are sold in homebrew stores. And it's conveniently also the size of Cornelius kegs, which are the old soda kegs that they used to use, which home brewers use quite often. Very convenient. The lids pop off, so they're easy to clean. You don't need any specialized equipment.
Cool.
So they're also called corny kegs.
Okay.
You hear them referred to. We got sort of the biggest pot we could find, and then we just used a propane burner, like you'd use for a corn roast or something like that.
Well, where did you guys do this?
We just did it out in front of Nate's garage.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Did the neighbors think you guys were like Heisenberg?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it smells really like sort of cereal. Like
Okay.
you're not.
It's
There's no
all-
weird chemicals. If people were like, the odd person came by, I was like, "Oh, what you up to there, boys?" And we are like, "Oh, brewing beer." They're like, "Oh, that sounds fun. Like, save some for me or whatever."
Right.
So yeah.
So how long were you guys doing this? So would you say originally it started as you guys just wanting to make your own beer?
Yeah.
How long did you guys do it?
So
before you-
we did that for maybe a year or so, and then we got to thinking, well, the kitchen at the gastropub, or the whole gastropub at the time, was closed on Sundays.
Mhm.
So we approached the owners, Shane and Chris, and asked them if they might be interested in allowing us to make a little brew pub operation, just very small, just using the stove at the restaurant, and that was it, and a bit of space downstairs for storage and for fermentation. And we took care of the licensing and went through all the steps involved in getting licensed to brew and sell beer. And it was quite successful. It was called Stockpot Ales, was the name for that particular venture. And we had some nice tap takeover events with Beyond the Pale and with Bose, sort of hosted and had all of our beers and a good, nice wide selection of their beers available. And yeah, it was great. So then we thought we would want to take it to the next level because we were brewing, our maximum batch was maybe 140 liters, which is quite modest. And we couldn't really get any bigger in that space. So then we started looking at what would be involved in a full-scale, sort of medium-sized craft brewery.
How much research went in transitioning from what you guys were doing to in terms of like were you guys actively looking for spaces? Were you collaborating with other brewers?
Yeah, so we brought on a fourth partner, a guy named Phil. We also worked with him. Nate worked with him way back in the day. Well, not that, but he's not that old. He'll be mad that I said way back in the day. Actually, I guess Phil will too. But they worked together previously, and Phil also worked with us for a stretch at the gastropub before he went to be the general manager at Supply and Demand, which was another restaurant that opened up recently. Sorry to answer your question. We did a lot of work. We kind of split it up, and as far as trying to figure out the different pieces of the puzzle there, we looked around in Ottawa proper and found that maybe things were a little pricey, and we were also looking at maybe we could find an area that didn't already have someone in the area. Not that it would be really a problem for more breweries to be popping up in proximity to one another. Probably is eventually helpful. But we found a great spot at the north end of Carleton Place downtown, right beside the Mississippi River.
Okay.
And it just sort of made sense. It was a good spot. It was a good location, and so we went through the steps of renting the space after we'd secured a business loan to be able to bring this thing to fruition. And now we're maybe 2 months away from actually putting some beer out the door.
Wow, 2 months away.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, we're on the timeline that we hoped was to be open sometime in August. So can't make any promises at the moment, but we're shooting for it. Should come together shortly. I mean, we've got most of our major equipment in place. We just need to order some more and do the little bit of renovation that we need to do.
Mm-hmm. What can you tell us? What is the market like for microbreweries in the Ottawa Valley area? Is there a big demand for them?
It's certainly growing. The LCBO posted, if you look at the curve since like 2006, the sales went from a couple million to approaching 91 million in Ontario craft beer.
Wow.
So it's definitely growing, and their sales of craft beer have increased quite a lot last year, and they're expected to increase again.
Well, what's happening? Are people consuming? Is there more demand for microbreweries from a consumer's point of view? Well, what do you think? You consume?
Yeah, I'd have to double check, but I believe overall beer sales are down on the whole.
Really?
On the whole, but
in Ontario,
Canada,
okay.
in Canada, we're drinking less beer, but craft beer sales, I think it's just it's a resurgence. I mean, something similar happened in the States. We're just a little bit behind that as far as the popularity, but I think more people realized that there was more types of beer out there, and the big brewers were sort of still doing what they were doing, and it was the small guys that were bringing back old beer styles or trying new ones, and it just sort of caught on. And I think to generalize, folks that drink the big brews or people that that's sort of the world that the beer world that they are happy with, are more monogamous, if you will.
Okay.
I drink blue, or I drink export, or Canadian, or whatever it is, whereas I've yet to see a craft beer, someone who enjoys craft beer, just drink one type of craft beer.
True.
Not like, let alone, okay, so someone might say really like porters or really like IPAs, but they're going to try a whole variety within that style. Usually, I would say.
Can you give us an idea of what type of person consumes? And I know we're generalizing, but let's play along with that. What kind of person consumes craft beers? From your,
I think all sorts. I mean, it's definitely more popular, I think, with people our age. I think people are on the younger end of the spectrum. As we've come into drinking beer, we've been exposed to artisanal or small scale producer. It's sort of hip, let's say, but then what comes with that is acquiring a taste for it, and then that increases the demand for it. But when I worked at the gastropub, there was people of all, like men, women, all ages. You would find people that just really, really loved craft beer.
What's as far as gender-wise, are women? Do women consume craft beer?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even in Ottawa, there's a group of beer-loving women called Barley's Angels.
Cool.
And they're sort of they have different events, and it's sort of a little.
Do they brew their own?
I think there's some brewers in there for sure.
How many brewers microbrewers are there in this region? Rough estimate.
I think we're over 20. If you include people that are about to open, I think it was 25 last count. A good resource if you want to see up and coming breweries or breweries that are already up is a site called Mom and Hops.
Interesting.
And
Mom and Hops.
Mom and Hops, yeah.
.ca?
MOM. Not sure. I have to check on that.
Google it or
But yeah, they've got a nice interactive map, and you can zoom into different regions, and they keep tabs on who's opening or who's closing or whatever. Yeah.
Is this community and this community that you're part of? Is it a very connected community? Do people know each other? Do they collaborate?
Oh yeah. You'll see lots of examples of breweries helping out other breweries, whether it's someone's short kegs and they lend them, or there's a great Ottawa community as far as craft beer goes. Even when we were starting to figure stuff out, Shane and Rob at Beyond the Pale were a huge help. Josh McJanet at Dominion City, the brewer there, was more than happy to have us come by and ask a couple questions and poke around his place and see some things. And I know that in turn we'll be just as supportive of people that come to ask for advice or for just to ask some questions or check things out.
I got a weird question on that. Is that it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, like a supportive community, maybe?
Yeah, because I think we realize that we're all small enough that competition against each other is silly.
That's a mature way of thinking for people.
Well, also, I mean, so you might hear there's 25 breweries in Ottawa. That is crazy, right? But San Diego has, and they're about a 2 million person population, has about 100 breweries. I feel like at breweries per capita, Germany's got like a huge number. Belgium's got a huge number. And really, the more people that we can introduce to craft beer, that there are alternatives to the quote-unquote domestic, or frankly, a lot of, I would say, at the risk of offending people, generic imports that seem to taste mostly the same, but maybe come in a different can. They're just letting people sort of explore a bit. Like wine, let's say over the past 20 years has become a little more popular. People have gotten to know the varietals, to get the regions. People take sommelier classes, that sort of thing. And I think that's happening as well in the craft beer world. You're sort of getting the Epicurean, foodie.
Sure.
People are saying, oh yeah, beer, you can have beer with dessert. You can have beer with an aperitif. Like, there's a style and there's a region for every sort of food. I think in some cases, if I'm eating a nice charred steak, I think I would prefer probably a glass of red wine. I'm not saying that beer always wins, but that it's an option and that it's not just
wine over beer.
Maybe, yeah, come on. I'm probably not alone in that, but yeah, and it's not like yeah.
In Ontario, speaking of microbreweries, which area has a big network of microbreweries? Is it the Ottawa?
Well, there's a lot happening in Toronto. I'm sorry, I should stop cutting you off. Do you want to?
No.
Oh yeah, okay.
Fine. It's an informal conversation.
Okay. All right. I'm not really connected in the Toronto scene, but just keeping tabs, on social media or whatever, just sort of because I like to just see what other guys are up to.
Sure.
There seems to be quite a network there for sure, but I think kind of like Ottawa's a small town and all else that we've got a nice community here. Maybe not as large, but certainly growing and picking up steam.
So you guys, you're starting. Would it be fair to call you guys a startup, almost like a?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because we Stockwad Ales, we haven't been able to brew for maybe a year or so, because we just didn't have the time because we were trying to get the next thing going as quickly as we could. So we're going to need to sort of reintroduce ourselves. We're also now in a new community that has a sizable population. Like, part of our approach is not to just be in Carleton Place because rent was good and sell all of our beer in Ottawa. Ideally, we'd like to sell almost all of our beer out of our retail store right next to our brewery, and to get people who maybe haven't been to Carleton Place to come out and check out downtown and stop and have a bite to eat and go for a walk along the river, that sort of thing. And it also makes business sense. The shorter our supply chain is, the shorter our distribution is, the less we have to drive around to drop off kegs, that sort of thing. Sure. The more people in that region, north to Almont and south to Perth and Smith Falls, I think the better. And not that we're going to exclude Ottawa, but our focus definitely is going to be trying to get, if they'll have us. There seems to be a bit of a buzz in town already. People
for your product.
Yeah, because we had meetings with folks at City Hall to talk to them first, for sort of about the planning. Like, is this something that you're going to let us do here? You got to get them to sign off on that sort of thing. Different people stopping by, just going, "Oh, hey, like, what's going on in this building?" And we're like, "We're going to be a craft brewery," and they're like, "Sweet," So that's the sort of thing.
As the local media there, I'm sure there's some local paper that they reached out to you guys as far as what. So the city knows.
The city knows for sure, and like the Business Improvements Association and the Chamber of Commerce. We've sent out some feelers just to say, "Hi, how's it going?" and we'll be in touch soon. We kind of want to have a firmer start date before we really start ramping up, so that we don't sort of build and go, "Oh, that's going to be in 2 weeks," or what have you. And we also, as much as it's going to be hard, we want to have a good stock when we start. We just don't want to sell out the first day, because we want to get as many, when people hear, "Oh, it's a new brewery, I mean, maybe we're going to go check it out." The last thing we want them to do is come and not be able to taste our beer and leave with some.
Sure.
Because that's the nice thing about beer is or I guess there's other products, but a beer does a little bit of marketing on its own once it leaves your store and goes to a party, or goes to someone's house and someone's friend tries some, because it's still got your name on it.
Sure.
The person who brought it's going to have a bit of your story with them, even if it's just like, "Oh, there's a new brewery in Carleton Place and their beer's delicious," So. Not that we're only going to rely on that as far as a marketing communication strategy goes, but it's nice, if you get some great candles. No offense to candle makers, but they're maybe a little harder as far as you're not really bringing tons of candles here and there. Whereas on your average weekend in the summer, there's tons of beers changing hands, changing houses, that sort of thing.
So what kind of beers are you guys? You're making three types.
Yeah, well, at the start, we're starting with 3, and we've got a few more up our sleeve, and we'll definitely be continuing to play around and bring out some ideas we have for sure. So we'll start with a bit of a spectrum. So number 1 will be our Dr. Feelgood IPA.
Is that what it's called?
Dr. Feelgood, yeah. So make you feel.
Who came up with the name?
I think Nate did that one. We kind of have a bit of a silly. Well, it's not a silly rule. It's actually served us quite well.
Silly's good.
Is that everyone has executive power, so you can veto anything.
Okay. Oh,
so
you mean
within the group. So we always, because we were firm believers that consensus, at least as long as we can, as long as we're a small team of 4 people, that if we can't operate by consensus, we shouldn't be working together. So it was sort of a funny rule at the start that well, everyone's going to have veto power. So if someone thinks something should be named something and you just hate it, you can just say no. But we've never actually used it. Okay. Which is sort of funny, is that we've never been like.
So you've always got along on decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, except for we had one IPA that we actually ended up naming DeVito after a tyrannical brewmaster.
Okay.
Well, no, one of our Edwin, because it was Eddie DeVito was the original name.
Okay.
Because we were just having such a tough time coming up with the name for our first beer, and he was just like, I don't think that's it. Like, not like, but just I don't think that's it, or like, no, And then we're finally like, all right, let's just call it DeVito.
And that's his name.
And it's not actually. Okay. Yeah, his last name's not DeVito, but he was vetoing everything, so we were calling him like the Vito was what we were calling him.
I just got it.
Yeah. It's all good.
I thought you meant DeVito as in the.
Yeah, there's a bit of a joke because it's like it was Eddie DeVito. It kind of sounds like Danny DeVito, but for no good reason other than I guess Eddie's short, but not as short as Danny DeVito. He'll hate me for saying that too. Anyway, so yeah, Dr. Feelgood. Because this is what was happening. It was I believe Nate was reading a biography about Motley Crue.
Okay.
And just for whatever reason we were listening to Motley Crue brewing beer one day. It's like, Dr. Feelgood would be a great name for a beer, and we were making a new beer. We were like,
is that a name?
Perfect.
Is that a?
It's the name of a song, I think. Yeah. Cool. And there's a couple other Dr. Feelgoods things out there, but you can kind of beer names until they're trademarked or have like kind of free license.
Sure.
I believe, until someone sends me a cease and desist order and we have to change something.
We'll find out. Eh?
Yeah, we'll find out.
It's all good.
Yeah.
So you got
So that's a nice full-bodied IPA that's got a nice creaminess to it. We put some rye and wheat in the mash, so that gives like a nice sort of spiciness, nice creamy mouthfeel, and it's got some nice tropical hops on it as well. And then we'll roll out our pale ale, or peach and apricot pale ale. It's called Papa.
Okay.
And that's our sort of crowd pleaser, easy drinking. It's not a light beer,
okay,
but it would fall well within the norms of a pale ale, which doesn't mean pale in color. Actually, the origins of pale ale as a name came when coke-fired kilns were developed, because previous to that, malt was always dried over an open fire, so it couldn't be as roasted nicely, and little things from the smoke would get into the malt, so you'd end up with a darker, like a brownie to black beer.
Okay.
And then when these new types of ovens came along, they were able to make beer that was paler than that, so that was why it was called pale ale. But it's still usually like a red, orange, golden sort of color. It's not like, light per se. So it's got a bit of hops.
So those are the two.
So those are two.
Oh, that's
yeah.
okay.
So Dr. Feelgood,
Right.
Papa,
Uh-huh.
and then finally we'll for the people that like dark stuff, we've got a rye stout called Bad Moon, because the original name was Bad Moon Rise Inn. And normally I can't get away with puns; they get shot down. They don't make it out. But then it can be kind of a long name, so we're going to just shorten it to Bad Moon. And
Let's play a game here. Tell us, describe who and why why someone would drink, the pale ale, for example.
I think anyone of legal drinking age,
Sure.
Of course, could enjoy a pale ale. They're not too bitter. They've got some hop flavor. There's the balance. There's some malt in there, but our peach and apricot pale ale, we really try to keep. You're not hunting for the peach and apricot. Some of that juiciness comes through.
Mm-hmm.
Is our goal, because sometimes you drink beers that say they've got some special ingredients, and you can't find it. So I don't know. So it's easy drinking. It's medium bodied. A little bit under 5%. It's I don't know. It's
Sorry,
a little bit. No, it's okay. It's maybe a little bit intriguing, but it's it's refreshing. But it's satisfying. It's got a full enough mouthfeel. You're not feeling like you're drinking water. You're still like, yeah, this is a beer.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to get too goofy after two, let's say.
Okay.
Whereas we've got a black IPA called Fat Lip.
Okay.
Fat Lip Black IPA.
Yeah.
See, I got away with it again somehow. I got a pun in there. But it's that one's more like pushing past 7%. It's really like dark and sort of resiny, and there's way stronger beers out there, but that that one's got a little more teeth to it. Let's say still nicely balanced, still very flavorful, but so a pale ale is like a nice sort of easy middle of the road beer. Like if you like, let's say like an amber.
Okay.
A lot of people know what an amber would taste like. It's an amber, but with a little more hops would be a pale ale.
Interesting.
So
I wish I could I need to try some.
Yeah, well, soon enough.
Couple of months, right?
Yeah.
You said August?
I would say, definitely like end of August, early September. We should be up and running, barring any sort of unforeseens. We've had a couple unforeseens, so.
Like what?
Oh, just that's that classic. Things take longer than they do. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Sure.
Insert generic wisecrack.
Yeah.
It's what's sort of funny is, and I've talked to other business owners too, is that you say you learn so much the first time you do it. You're like, oh, I didn't even think about that, or oh, if I had known, I would have started that process 2 weeks earlier, or whatever it was. And it's not nothing major. There's no disasters or anything. But the next brewery I open will be I'll be ready.
Now tell us about your team and who who's involved and the rules and responsibilities.
Sure. So
and start with yourself as far as what you're.
So my background's communications. So I've worked with Canada Post, and I've worked with I've freelanced, worked with Media Style for a little while as far as doing communications work goes. So writing and editing, social media management, that sort of thing, I'll do. But I've also done a lot of project management stuff. So I've taken on the role of being the office manager of sorts. So making sure we remit taxes, so we don't piss off CRA. And,
would it be responsible? Would it be fair to say that you're the responsible one in the bunch?
well, everyone's got their other responsibilities, but we're sharing the load for sure.
I was just joking.
Yeah, no. I know. And then the Ed and Nathan are going to be our principal brewers. So Phil and I will definitely help out around the brewery for sure. But they'll take on focusing on making the beer and getting it just right. And Phil will be taking on sales and deliveries to start, and then we'll see where it goes. We'll see what works, or if we need to shift things up a bit down the road. But we're going to try to do all the work ourselves to start, just sort of purely as a budget issue to start, just to get things rolling, and then we'll see for sure.
I find it very cool and very interesting when people take on projects, like entrepreneurial projects, be it a web startup, a brewery, so on and so forth. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a sense of confidence. You have to be focused, and a bunch of other things, right? Like you got to believe in your product.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, part of it is you're not going to borrow and spend a whole bunch of money if you're like not confident that you can make it work. But
what do you?
I was talking. This is sort of a couple months ago, I guess, and I was things were coming together, and then there was a couple things still up in the air. So like it's like, is this? I wasn't seriously doubting, but I was just like, can we do this? Mm-hmm. And a buddy of mine quoted Wayne Gretzky, and he's right. I mean, I guess it's I think it was a suiting metaphor. Apparently, Wayne Gretzky said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take."
Sure.
Right? So
that's a very famous quote.
And the other thing is that there's four of us, so any sort of crushing responsibilities in the event of total disaster will at least be split four ways. Sure. So it's not all on me, which makes it a bit easier.
It's a collective, it's a team effort, right?
For sure. And I think there's a lot to be said for having a good team. I think if it was just me, I wouldn't be able to do it. Just in terms of figuring out all the different pieces, or I can't make that appointment, but someone else can, or whatever it is. And then also when it comes just into putting in the grunt work, it's nice to have a team of guys that work as hard as you do, and we can have fun doing it. We were kind of colleagues first, and then we became friends, and now we're business partners. But it's nice going into a situation knowing what it's like to work with these guys. Not that
Isn't that very important?
I would think so. I mean, the people say, "Oh, don't go into business with your friends; it'll ruin your friendship." But on the other hand, I can't imagine not being friends with the people I work with.
Yeah.
Not so. It makes it easier. I mean, I always sort of find that you become friends with people you work with, hopefully anyway. But this is nice, sort of knowing, knock wood, that we're just gonna start something and it's gonna be awesome and it's gonna grow and we're gonna be really happy that we did it.
On that note, what are you guys, as far as how different businesses have, or all businesses have their own kind of definition of quote unquote success.
Yeah.
What is, as far as this brewery, how are you guys measuring success? What does that mean?
Well, I guess it'll come in stages. Number one would be,
and I know I'm putting you on this.
No.
It's just interesting.
It's in general terms. First would be having positive cash flow. So, like, are we bringing in more than we're putting out? Like, can we keep doing this as our jobs? I mean, that's maybe obvious, but that would be number one. Number two would be, can we grow to be a sustainable business that we can say has been well received by the public and by other craft breweries. Are we getting other requests to be involved in neat events or to do collaborations, or can we are people excited to come by, or that sort of thing. I think we're not looking to become, at least at this stage, we're not being like, oh, we're going to be a national brand.
Right.
We're going to brew 40 million liters of beer. We're going to have an empire, and we're going to start stomping people out, absorbing them and shutting them down, Sure. Not that I know anyone who does that. But yeah, I think there's lots of room to grow, and I mean, if we were basically all went into it saying if we could maintain the same standard of living we all have now, mm-hmm. and that was our jobs, we'd be happy, and anything else beyond that is bonus. As far as not just monetarily, but as far as the size of the business, like right now, we've done the math as best we can on how much time we're going to need to put into it, and we've done the math on can it be a sustainable business, and I mean the real test will come in a couple months, but it seems quite feasible. So mm-hmm. so we're going to take it one day at a time, as they say, but sure. One brew at a time, mm-hmm. and make beer, sell that beer hopefully, and then depending on how fast we sell it, we'll adjust supply to that demand. And we've I think wisely invested in a size of a system that lets us ramp up pretty well, and we've got enough space that we can get more tanks, that we can get larger tanks, that we've got several points where we could introduce more automation to make things more efficient. Mm-hmm. Time-wise, it's just a matter of having the capital to invest in the equipment. So we'd have a pretty clear sort of growth trajectory, if you can say sure, that. Yeah. Just that would just sort of happen naturally if the demand is there. And obviously we'll do all we can to put ourselves out there and to build partnerships that make sense for us as far as visibility or how we want to be as a company, in a community and in a wider community.
Mm-hmm. If you could elaborate on that, what as far as microbreweries, what do all of them have in common as far as beyond the obvious that they're making beer, what other commonality or challenge do they share when it comes to selling their product, right? What?
Well,
from a business
standpoint, I read an article relatively recently, I think it was within the last year. Steve Beauchesne, the CEO and one of the founders of Bose out in Vankleek Hill, said that everyone waits when the new brewery opens up to be like, oh, is this going to be the one that makes it too many? And then they sell it the first day. Mm-hmm. And then I think the challenge is naturally people are maybe conservative when they start up, and they go, well, okay, I'll be this big because that's a lot of beer. So if I can sell that much beer, that'd be great. And then they go, oh, Nelly, I could sell way more beer. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just that challenge right at the start, because the demand is there, but you've probably spent about everything you can spend and borrowed everything you can borrow and called in all the favors sure. to get to the point of opening, because it's a lot of equipment that even when you get it used isn't cheap. The materials aren't too bad, but there's a cost there. But
is it over 40 or under?
What?
Is it the equipment, like generally speaking? Is it?
Oh, like I would say
used,
you would easily for everything you need, you could easily spend $200,000 if not more.
Wow.
And that's doing everything as cheaply as you can, I would say. Wow. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're ordering new equipment, mm-hmm. you can easily spend $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 just on your brew house and some fermenters and whatnot. There's cheaper stuff coming on the market. Apparently, the quality of stuff coming out of China is improving, which is cheaper, I guess, because of labor and, mm-hmm. and other macroeconomic factors that I shan't delve into. But yeah, it's not cheap, and you got to buy sanitary hose. There's lots of stainless steel. You don't want to buy not stainless steel because your equipment's gonna fall apart. You need food grade pumps. You need there's a lot of kegs are easily $100 each used.
Wow.
It all adds up.
What can you give us a breakdown? And I know I'm putting you on
Oh,
the
sorry.
spot.
Well, I can go back to just the question that everyone was facing. So the challenge is being able to grow fast enough once you're open.
Okay.
That's the challenge. Or
Wow, that sounds
to
like an
have
opportunity.
well, it is. But then you're and this isn't a bad thing.
Right.
But you're in a space where you've just opened a brewery and now you need to almost open up a whole other brewery, or you're brewing like crazy on the system that you have
Mm-hmm.
to meet the demand that's there, which is great. And I mean, I don't in any way mean this as a criticism. This is just, we're not the first guys in town doing this, so we've had the benefit of seeing the experience of some of the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And we may run into the same problem, but on the other hand, as you say, that's not a bad problem to have, that you're selling beer as fast as you can make it.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you can maintain that quality. And I think that's something that everyone's pretty big on, is that we realize that it kind of hurts the craft beer cachet if we're putting out stuff that isn't
Up
to
to
a standard.
standard?
Yeah.
Because you are, I mean, if how would one differentiate like a macro beer from a micro beer? Is
Well, you can't.
quality
I mean,
the
but not necessarily, because the big guys have started their own sort of sub labels that are in the brewing the styles and the types of beer that craft brewers are making, because they're realizing that they're losing market share.
Of course.
So there's. I don't think it's necessarily a taste thing. I think it's just been a style thing. If you go to the beer store and you look at the Big Ten,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost all the same type of beer that is in that Big Ten.
And it's not to knock the Big Ten. They're not. It's not good beer. I mean, this is my opinion.
Perhaps it's not.
Sells.
Perhaps it's not
It's like McDonald's.
distinctive
Yeah.
in a way. They're medium-bodied, crisp, usually light, usually lagers.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fun, and I don't mean to knock it as a category. I don't mean to say that there's anything wrong if that's your taste.
Right.
Um,
What do you drink?
really like IPAs. I really like stouts. Really like things with rye in them. But like when I worked at the gastropub, I was opened up just the whole world of wine, for example. And then you realize, because I thought before, I was more of a red wine guy, let's say. If given the option, red or white, I would go red. And after some years of working there, it would be like, oh, well, what's the red, what's the white? What am I eating? Is it a light-bodied red? Is it a really tannic red? Is it a off-dry white? Is it, there's all these different characteristics that white wine can have or red wine can have, the same way that you would say like an IPA, okay, it's going to be a bit stronger, it's going to be hoppy, but there's a huge spectrum within that style that each beer by and large is different. So you might, it's a hot day and you just got off your bicycle or whatever, like, oh yeah, Radler, perfect, or you're out for brunch, maybe a Weiss beer would be the ticket to go with your eggs or whatever. Or you're having some chocolate and maybe a nice mocha porter would just be the ticket. It's that same sort of thing. So going back to the polygamy thing, I think most people who like craft beer drink just a wide variety.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't just be like, I'm a drinker of this.
As far as trends in this line of business, what do you see in the next couple of years? What trends can you forecast?
I think we'll see more growth. I mean, I hope we do.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll see more breweries opening up, for sure. I think you'll see more things like what we did at Stockpot Ales. We got our inspiration from this place called Moto Burger in Windsor.
Okay. Okay.
that was sort of a diner, and they just started brewing their own beer, really small batch, but got the proper license and all that. So not being a full-scale brew pub, but having someone who knows how to brew beer and having some small equipment, and you might have a house beer that isn't contract brewed, like you don't pay a brewery to make it for you, you make it in-house. I think you'll see more of that. Indie Ale House, or not Indie Ale, Indie Ale is more brew pub, but Barvolo in Toronto was a place like that, like sort of just back in their kitchen area. They had a small brewing setup, and they made some great stuff, still do. But I think they've moved on to have a bigger facility as well. But I think you'll see more places like that.
Where can we find you guys online?
So we'll have a website up in a little while.
But you're on social media, right?
We are on social media. So website will be stalwartbrewing.ca, and we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Stalwart Brewing.
Very cool. So I'm hoping I can interview you guys in a couple of months when.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure. We'll have you out. You can
definitely
do the tour.
I'm looking forward to that. I might even do some videography.
Oh, sure.
You know,
It'll look great on radio.
Yeah, it will. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Conversations with Garmamie. For more information, visit garmamie.com. That's GARMAMIE.com. GARMAMIE.com.